Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Invitation to Puzzles, the series where we try to get you into some of the sorts of puzzles that appear. We're continuing. I'm going to do a second U-Bahn. So I have mentioned before that U-Bahns I think are quite interesting, but they're a little hard to get into. So I'm going to do a few of this series by KNT for you and talk to you about some of the basics about how to think about these puzzles. So I went over the rules before, but just to remind you, what happens here is we need to fill in a loop network into these cells, which means that we need to draw in loop-like lines, except unlike a normal loop puzzle where the loop would look something like that, my loop is allowed to branch like that, and it's even allowed to cross itself like that. So all of these things are allowed. The only restrictions on the loop network, that is, the only things that stop me from just drawing random green lines and calling it good, are I can't have any dead ends, so I can't actually do that. That's not a valid loop network. And the loop network has to connect in some way or another. So in other words, I can't do this because I can't get from this little circle to over here. So the thematic conceit of U-Bahn puzzles is that you're making a subway network. And so you're attempting to connect everyone. So if you can't connect everyone, then that's a problem. You're not obligated to visit all the cells, though, so you can certainly omit any cells you wish as long as you meet all the clues. The clues we have tell us how many of some particular type of tile there are. So this is usually called a branch. Usually this is a turn, a straight, a branch, and an intersection. And so the clue here is telling me there's 4 branches in this column. Note, it's only telling me there's 4 branches. It is providing me no information about the number of corners, straightaways, or intersections. And likewise here and here. So this is telling me there's 3 straightaways. It's providing no other information. And so the only information given is by the clues. And a clue can be 0 if it wants to tell you there's nothing of some particular type. Okay, so one place that's always a good place to start with a U-Bahn is if you have any clues that concern the locations of 4-way intersections. So in this case, I need to put 2 4-way intersections into this row. And the reason is 4-way intersections are the most restricted. You can't ever put them on edges. So these 2 4-way intersections, they need to go into these 3 cells. Okay. And what I want you to note is that means that I can't exclude this cell from the loop network, for example. Because if I exclude this cell from the loop network, well, this can't be a 4-way intersection anymore. Because if it was, it would cross into the cell that I'm claiming is not part of the loop network. So that doesn't work. So basically, by making this cell out of the network, I've removed both of those as being possible from being 4-way intersections, and only one of these 3 is not a 4-way intersection, if you prefer to think about it that way. Okay. The same would happen if I removed this from the loop network. It'd actually be even a bigger catastrophe. It would actually mean none of these were 4-way intersections. And if I removed that, it would make both of those not 4-way intersections. So in fact, all 3 of these are in the loop network. Which I denote in my little very light sort of blue here. And what's better, actually, if I don't make this connection, well, this connection actually is necessary because it's there if this cell is a 4-way intersection, and it's there if this cell is a 4-way intersection. And I know one of these 2 cells is a 4-way intersection, and so whichever one it is that. Okay, and when I say I know one of these 2 is a 4-way intersection, just to be precise, what I mean is I know one of these 2 is a 4-way intersection, at least, but maybe both are, but in that case, line is just double here. And the same argument works over here. One of these 2, at least, is a 4-way intersection, and therefore that line is always in. Okay, so we get that coming up through there. Now, what am I doing with that? Let's see. I do know there's 4 corners here. So let's do the same analysis a little bit with this row. I need all but one of these cells to be a corner. And so anything that means that 2 of them aren't corners doesn't work. So for example, removing this cell never works, because if I remove this cell, it actually makes neither of these be a corner. And if I remove this cell, it actually makes neither of these be a corner. And so these 2 cells are both always present in my loop network. And a similar story happens in this column, where everything in here except for 1 needs to be a 3-way intersection. And actually, I guess that's okay if this one is out. I think that is okay. Okay, so what else are we looking at here? So yeah, so here we have 4 T's. So at least one of these is a T. Notably, this row and this column are in a great deal of tension, because this cell can't be both a 3-way and a corner. And as soon as it's not a 3-way, then all the rest of the cells here are 3-ways. And as soon as it's not a corner, then all the rest of the cells here are corners. Okay, what is that? What are we getting at now? Oh, that's the point. I see. Okay, so the point here is slightly more subtle than I was at first making it out to be. The point concerns this square and that clue. And so the point is, what happens if I do make this a plus? And the answer is, if I make this a plus, I can no longer put 3 straight lines in this column. And that's because that's not a straight line. There's no way I can make that a straight line. And so I'd have to make all 3 of these a straight line, but then the only way I can make this a straight line is this. The only way I can make this a straight line is this. And then that's going to run off the world. So if I try to make this a 4-way intersection, it just destroys my ability to make this column work. And so I actually know where the 2 4-way intersections are. And so, again, my usual way of marking this is to mark something as green once I know it's done. Blue just means it's definitely in the network. Okay, and so now this column is here to tell me that everything left in this column is a T, which sometimes I'll denote with a 3. So again, if I want to mark, I know what kind of piece goes somewhere, but I don't know what it looks like, I just use 1 for this, 2 for this, 3 for this, and 4 for this. So in order to get 4 T's in, all of these need to be T's. And we know what at least 2 of those T's look like, because these T's only have 3 directions they can go. And note that fills in some corners over there. So those corners are done. And we have these. And now this row, now remember I need everything except that cell to be 1s. And so we can write in that all of these are 1s. So in particular, they're all involved in the loop network. And I know how to make this a 1. Namely, I do it like that. So that's now done. Okay. Now. Okay, so now that line is not straight. That's one of two not straight lines that I get in this row. Sorry, in this column, I should say. Oh, I know that this is a 1, so I know it extends this way, if you think about it. There's sort of two 1s that exist for this cell. One of them is that, and one of them is this. They both share this line. And now if I think about what this one can possibly be, well, it certainly never extends that direction, because that would break this being a 1. And so the two ways I could do it are that way. Sorry, are this way and this way. So again, this one sort of forces an X. And the X here, which you can get just by clicking on the border between two things, by the way. This X here allows you to extend this over here, because now this one has to do that. And so now this 3 is done, and now this 3 is forced. So we can now say we know what these pieces look like. For sure. Okay, this is now in. Okay, so this clue is done. This clue is now done. Feel free to use orange or something like that is what I usually use to say this clue is done. Okay, all but one of these remaining cells is straight. And if you look at it, this one turns either up or down. And whichever one it does, it both itself isn't straight, and it breaks another cell from being straight. Because if this goes up, that cell's now not straight, and if this goes down, that cell's not straight. And the logical consequence of that is both of these are straight. And so I can actually fill that in, because otherwise I'm not getting my requisite number of straights, right? I only get 2 none-straights in this whole row. Okay, now one of these is straight, and the other one gets connected to by the 1. Okay. Now I need 3 T's in this column. And I know conveniently 2 cells that aren't T's. And so therefore the other cells here are T's. Which is going to let me bounce that through there, and this through here. It's going to let me mark all of those as being done. Okay, so we got our 2 3-ways that only had one way to go, and our 2 corners. And notably, these 2 we know are corners, so we're done with those. Now, remember the one rule that I always forget, which is that the loop network itself has to connect. And so if this turns up, actually, the loop network doesn't connect. It actually has 2 different pieces, because remember, this is a corner. So it either goes up, in which case the top and bottom halves just get completely separated, or it goes down and they connect. So it has to go down. Okay, and then this is now done, and this is now done. Because remember, we needed 3 of these. So it's those 3. That's now done. I can get rid of the 1 marker there. And this is supposed to be a 3, and it now only has 1 3 it can be, which is that one. And notice again, the network can't stop, so we come over here. And now all of these cells are done. And that is our answer to this puzzle. There we go. Lovely puzzle. Again, this is a lovely series by KNT. I mentioned in the previous U-Bahn video that KNT set about, in fact, it turns out to be 23 of these for this series to sort of go over some of the ways of thinking about U-Bahn puzzles. So I think it is a good way for anyone who's interested to sort of try and get a little bit into these things. All right. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope your trains arrive on time, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.